Hello developers, welcome to day 13 of the 30 Days of JavaScript Challenge. Today presents another chance for us to engage with challenges and further enrich our understanding of JavaScript concepts. Let's dive in and make the most out of this learning journey. Today's challenge says, given a positive integer, millis, write an asynchronous function that sleeps for milliseconds, and it can resolve any value. So example 1 says, if the input is 100, it should return 100, because you see that in the explanation it says that when it resolves, it takes the current time, that is date.now, minus t. And you have seen here t is the time before this promise was resolved. So if you take that time and the current time, it should be 100, because the promise will have delayed for 100 milliseconds. Example 2 is just the same thing. If the input is 200, the output should also be 200, because just like we did before, it just takes the time before the promise was resolved and the time after the promise has resolved. And the interval between those two times is the time that the promise has delayed. And in this case, it's 200. And the constraints are the millis should be between 1 and 1000. So first, let us learn some key concepts before we solve this challenge. The first concept that we learn is synchronous operations. So, synchronous operations is where tasks are executed one after the other in a sequential order, and each task must wait for the previous task to complete before it can start. In short, synchronous operations block the execution of further code until the current operation is finished. Let's say I'll use an example. Let's say I have a function called add that adds two numbers. So it will take parameters a and b and returns the sum of a and b, like this. So let's say I have this function. Then I have a console.log statement here that will log to the console start. Then the next statement, I'll call this add function with the values 3 and 5, like that. Then I'll store the results in a variable called result. So I'll say let result is equals this result here. Then I'll write another log statement that I'll log the result. So I'll say something like result, then I put a colon, then I put the results there. Then after that, I'll log a statement saying end. So here I have some statements. Let me just remove this space in between them. So I have some statements here. So this one is a function. So this code will be executed in synchronous manner. That means that first, this start will be logged in the console. Then this function will be called. Then the result will be stored in this variable result. Then after that, this line 7 will be logged, results, then the result will be logged. Then the last statement is end, that will be logged in the console. It will happen in synchronous manner. That means it will execute line by line. And that is how this code will work. So let me run and confirm that. So you can see in the console to start logging start, then to log the results, that is 8, then to log end. So you can see it logged in the right order as they appear in the code. So that is called synchronous manner. So let us look at asynchronous and see how it differs from the synchronous. So in a synchronous operation, tasks can be executed concurrently and independent of each other. So that means that tasks do not necessarily wait for each other to complete before they start. So let's say I have a function here. I have a function. I'll call it delayed message, like that. And what this function does, it just logs till log. Let's say it logs hello there, like that. So this when I call this function, I expect the string hello there to be logged in the console. But and to make this one an asynchronous operation, so I'll make use of the set timeout function so that I can delay this function for some specified amount of time. So this set timeout function is like that. It's an inbuilt JavaScript function that is used to execute a specified function or a piece of code after a specified delay time, and it takes in a callback function and the delay time as parameters. Delay time as parameters. So this callback function here, we can make it to the is done that will return console.log. So I'll just create that callback function here, or I can just create anonymous function inline. So I'll just create anonymous function. So I'll create, let me just use the arrow function syntax. It will not take any argument and it will return this line of code. So I'll just move this line here, like that. Then the delay time. The delay time is the time in milliseconds. So I want this function to be delayed for 2 seconds. So I'll call it in 2000. This is 20,000. So 2000 milliseconds. So we know that 2000 milliseconds is equals to 2 seconds. And this set timeout function, you have said that it takes in a callback function and the delay time in milliseconds. That's why I put here 2000, because I know it will be 2 seconds. So now if I call this function here, delayed message, if I call it, I expect it to write hello there, but it will write after 2 seconds. So below here, let me just put another log. I'll log. First, let me log. Okay, let me just copy this code and paste it up here. So I'll log here, I'll say start. Then after logging start, I'll log this, I'll call this delayed message, then I'll log end. Let us run this code and see. So you'll see in the terminal, it will first log start. If said it will log start, then end, then hello there. It didn't log it in the order that I wrote it here. That is because when it's first run, it logged start. Then this delayed message, it's supposed to log hello there, but it won't log immediately. It will wait for 2 seconds. That means that this other code here will run, this line 10 will run before line 8. And that is how the asynchronous operation works. It does not block the execution of the further code. Instead, it allows the program to continue executing other tasks while waiting for the asynchronous operation to complete. So this other code will be executed while it waits for this other to complete. So until this one is completed is when it will be executed. So this one will execute before this one, and that is how asynchronous operation works. The next concept that we'll learn is the concept of asynchronous functions. And we'll learn how to use this async and the await keywords. So first, I'll return yesterday's code. So this is the code that we had yesterday. This code, we're learning about promises, and we saw how we can create a promise and how we can consume that promise using the then and the catch method. But this operation here, since we had not learned about the asynchronous operation, we used a simple operation of adding 2 numbers. But in most cases, this operation will be an asynchronous operation, meaning that it is an operation that will take some time. Like usually it involves some input or output operations like fetching data from a server, reading files, or waiting for some user input. So we can try and mimic this, and we can write here an asynchronous operation. So I'll just rewrite my promise, but this time I'll be using the asynchronous operation. And we can mimic the time spent doing a task with the set timeout function that we already learned. We said that this set timeout function takes a callback function and the delay time as parameters. So this callback function will be called after this specific delay time, and this delay time is in milliseconds. So I can just return my function here. So it will be something like this. I'll use the arrow function syntax. So let me just resolve it immediately, because we just have to perform a task that does something. So let's say it will resolve with 3, and the delay time will be, let's say, 2 seconds. So that is 2000 milliseconds. So I can just write my promise like this, and you can see I didn't use the reject. I can just remove this reject, it's optional. So I can leave the resolve like that alone. So this is my promise, and this promise does this task that will take 2 seconds. I'm trying to mimic a task like, let's say you are fetching data from a server. You can see that's a task that takes some time. It does not fetch it immediately. It takes some time before it can fetch that data. So I'm trying to mimic a a task that takes some time in my promise. Then in this promise, when the promise resolves, in this case, if the data is fetched, and to log that response, and if there's error, also log that error. So basically, this is how I can rewrite my promise. And if you run this code, just like yesterday, we expect it to log 3. So it will log 3, but it will log 3 after some 2 seconds, and that is what has happened here. So since you know that this is an asynchronous operation, that means that, and you know that this then will only be called if this promise has resolved, and this promise will resolve after 2 seconds. That means that this then will also be called after 2 seconds. So if I have another log down here, let's say I have a log that says hello. This hello will be logged before this response, because this response will wait for 2 seconds, and this hello down here does not wait for any time. So if I run this code, you'll see first it will log hello, then it will wait for some 2 seconds, then it will log 3, like that. So basically, this is how the asynchronous is done. But this one sometimes can become messy. In fact, if you have a promise nesting another promise, this can become very complex and it might be hard to understand. That's why we have these functions called asynchronous functions that make our work a little simpler. So let us look at their syntax. So let me just comment this promise here, and also let me just comment this log. Then down here, I'll create a function. I'll call it, let me just call it my function, like that. So this is the basic syntax of creating a function. But this function, for it to be an asynchronous function, you have to use this async keyword. So here I'll put async, like that. And the asynchronous function has this await keyword. And the await keyword is used to wait for a promise to resolve. And this await keyword can only be used inside an asynchronous function. So here, since we know that this promise will take some time to resolve, we can wait for it first to finish resolving, then we do something else. So here, I can just await for that promise. We called it promise, so I'll await for that promise. After it has finished resolving, it will return a response. We can store that response in a variable. I'll call that variable response. So I'm trying to mimic what this then was doing. So after this promise returned our number 3, this 3 was taken by this, then this then logged the 3, and that is exactly what we'll do here. So after this promise has resolved, you can see you're using the await keyword here to wait for this promise to resolve. After it has finished resolved, we'll store the result in this response. Then down here we can log the response, like that. And now if you call this function my func, if I just call it, then I run this code, you'll see it will just do what exactly the then was doing. So I expect it to log 3, but after 2 seconds. But the advantage of this is that it tries to mimic the normal way of how code runs, because this line 15 will not run until this promise first finishes until this promise is first resolved, is when this line will run. That means if I have another console here, like the one we did before, if I have another console.log and I log hello, initially we saw that this hello should log before this response. But now, since I'm using this await keyword, these other lines, they'll try to mimic how the synchronous function works, how the synchronous operation works. These other lines will first have to wait for this line to finish, is when these lines will be executed. So here, this hello will log after this response. So it will log 3, then hello. So I can just run to confirm that. You can see it will wait for some seconds, then to log 3 first, then hello, because it will only continue execution after it has gotten the response from this promise. And that is the power of the async await keywords. But this has a disadvantage, because now we can no longer use this. We don't have access to this catch that this .then and .catch was giving us. Here you have mimicked the then, but you don't have access to this catch. So if you want to try to mimic this catch, you'll have to use the try, because you know that now that this code is executed in order, you can use the try catch syntax. So I'll just nest this inside the try block, so I can put the try catch there. Then all this, I'll nest it inside the try here. Then the catch, I'll try to make this catch with that other catch. So I'll just log the error like that. Error. So this way I'll have mimicked what this was doing exactly, and that is what I've done here. First, I'll try this one. If there's an error, I'll catch that error and log that error. So this other line is what this catch here was doing. This line 9 here. That is what you have implemented now using this try catch block. So if I save this code and run, you can see it will still work. And in case of an error, the error will also be caught and logged. And that is how you use the async await keyword. So I believe by now you have understood how to use this async await. So let us go to solve the challenge. Now that you know about the asynchronous process, the synchronous process, and you know about the async and await keywords, you can comfortably solve this challenge. So the challenge expects us to write an asynchronous function. So I'll just create my asynchronous function here. Use the async keyword. So I'll say asynchronous function like that. Then I'll call it sleep. That is my function there. So this function should accept a positive integers mailies. I'll just copy that and paste it here. Then it should resolve any value. So we can, this function when called, it should return that keeps function and resolves any value. So it should return a promise that resolves any value. So I can return a promise. So to create a promise, use the new promise syntax. So capital P, promise, like that. You know that this promise takes in the resolve and reject. But in this challenge, you'll just take the resolve because you're not told about the reject. So we have to wait for a specific time. We can make use of the set timeout function that we already learned, that it will delay this for this specified time. So you know that this set time function takes in a callback function and the delay time. So the callback function in this case will be the resolve. Then the delay time will be the mailies that we got up here. So yeah, and this function you have to return it, but we'll use the, since it's an asynchronous function, we can use the await keyword that will wait for this function to resolve, then it will return the result. And this solution was just like that, as simple as that. So you can just try it with these examples here. There are 2 examples. You can just try it and you'll see that it will work. So see you in the next video. Peace out.